After diving off the deep end in the world of carbon fiber, there were so many unknowns that made me question my decision to attempt such a massive job. In today's video, you're gonna see what all the hours, research, and hard work equates to in the form of a truck part. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I am super excited for today's video. We are going to make our very first carbon fiber part for the 68 C10. That's a huge deal, and I know a lot of people are skeptical of my composite abilities, and I don't really care what anyone thinks or says. I'm getting this carbon fiber C10 done no matter what, so we better get to work. All the materials you're gonna see in this video are from Composite Infusions. I'll have a link to their website down in the description. They hooked me up with everything I needed to do some resin infused parts, and if you have any sort of questions about what I'm using, leave a comment and I'll be sure to help out if I can. In the last couple episodes here on the channel, you guys watched me struggle big time to make this fiberglass tailgate mold. And after a couple tries and a bit of wasted material, it's finally ready to go. So the very first step I need to do now that the mold is ready is start off by applying some gum tape on the entire perimeter of the mold. And what that's going to allow me to do is stick on a vacuum bag once everything is laid up, but we'll get to that later on. This is the gum tape. It's basically just a strip of putty that's super adhesive. So the gum tape is on, and you can see that I left the little protective paper on the tape, and that's just because we're not going to use the tape right now and I don't want everything to stick to it. So with that done, it's time to move on to the release agents. So the thing is with this tailgate mold, I can't just lay down some carbon fabric and expect it to look nice and straight. I'll have to cut out this middle section just to make sure that the weave stays straight on the top portion and the bottom portion where the letters are. Because if I would just put a layer of fabric down just like that, you know, with this hump in the middle, something would have to be distorted. So that's going to be task number one, cutting out that middle section, and then we'll go from there. To make clean seams and cuts with carbon fiber, I got some carbon fiber veil, and how that helps is once I spray some spray tack and put the veil over the carbon fabric, it holds all the strands together and makes a nice clean cut. If you are to cut carbon fiber just with scissors, it's gonna fray, and you're gonna be able to see that in the finished part. So I'm gonna put this little bit of veil, and that holds everything together. So in the last clip, you guys could see that I was cutting my fabric with scissors and a little razor blade, and it did the job, but it didn't really work very well. And what I did is I went on Amazon and picked up one of these roller cutters. This thing is going to make a huge difference for my future parts. It makes super clean cuts and it's so easy to use. So with the middle section cut out, you can kind of see where I was going with my plan. The fabric is nice and relaxed on the top and bottom of the tailgate, and I'll just have to cover up the missing section with a new piece of fabric. That means there's going to be a seam, but you won't really be able to notice it if I get it right. Alright, so we got the first layer of carbon on the tailgate mold. It's super exciting. I can't wait to start infusing, but it's looking good so far. The weave seems to be pretty straight all across the board, and I was able to put some spray tack in the corners and get those to stick pretty good. Now that I have my first layer of 3K fabric down, I'm gonna move over to the 6K, and that's gonna be my middle layer, followed by another layer of 3K. So 3 layers total, and then these 2 last layers are super easy to lay down because I don't have to worry about the weave and making sure it looks nice. Just gonna use a bit of spray tack to stick the carbon in the corners again. And this one should go a lot faster because I don't have to worry about the look. So it's going to be a middle layer. You can't see it. So here I'm just working the material, making sure it goes in all the corners and makes all the curves. You have to make sure you get it right, because if not, you'll have some bridging, and that's where resin pools, and that makes your part heavier, and it also makes it weaker, so you don't want that. And for the second layer, I also flipped the fabric over. If you alternate how your fabric is laid down, it actually makes the part stronger as well. And there's the third and final layer. With a bit of trimming, this thing is almost ready for the next step. So all 3 layers of carbon is laid up. It's looking super good. And now it's time to lay up some peel ply. So here you can see that I'm laying down some red mesh, and this is called flow media or flow mesh, and it allows a little air gap in between the vacuum bag and the actual part, and this allows the resin to flow through the part when I'm doing the infusion. You'll see what I mean as the video goes on. So to do my infusion, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the spiral tubing that you can see right there with a T-fitting right in the middle, and I'm going to do that on both sides of the tailgate, and one side is going to be the resin inlet, and then the other side is going to be the vacuum inlet. So as I'm applying the vacuum bag to the tailgate, I have to allow for some pleats. Now the pleats let the bag follow all the complex shapes of the tailgate, because if I wouldn't have any pleats, this bag does not stretch one bit, and I would have air gaps everywhere, and it's called bridging, and you'd have bridging everywhere, which would make a total disaster of the part. To pull a vacuum, I'm using a catch pot and vacuum pump from Composite Infusions, and I'm hooking up this pump to run on 240 volts to help it run a bit more efficiently. Bag is done. We've got the resin inlet line clamped off, and we've got our vacuum pump setup hooked up, so it's ready to go. I'm going to turn this on, and I'm going to pull a vacuum on this, and then we'll see if there's any leaks, and we'll be ready to go for the infusion. So I just opened up my infusion epoxy and I was a little surprised to see that it's a solid. And I didn't panic because I did see a label saying that if it does crystallize, it just has to be heated up. So what I'm gonna have to do is put it in my oven at 50 degrees Celsius, and I don't know how long it's gonna take. We're gonna see. We'll test it out in about half an hour just to see where it's at, and then we'll go from there. So after several hours at 50 degrees Celsius, it's finally ready to go. So I just mixed up a batch of resin, and right here, after a few calculations, I'm pretty much ready to infuse. So it's the moment of truth. I am so excited. Hopefully this works pretty good, but we're gonna find out right now. So the infusion worked really well. I didn't know what to expect, but it was a nice even pull all the way through. The only thing that's getting me a little worried is that when I clamped off the vacuum hose, a little bit of air seeped through, and you can see it in the part. With the research I've done, ideally you don't want air in between your vacuum bag and your part, and that is what you can see there. You can see the color difference. That's actually some air. I'm not too concerned that it's going to mess up the finish of the part since this is such a thin laminate stack, but it could definitely have an impact. Hopefully it's not too bad or you can't see it at all, but we're going to find out later on, and I'm going to have to put this in my oven to cure for 8 hours at 180 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's the day after the infusion and I let this cure overnight, and everything seems to have worked pretty well. And you can see that the resin did get hard because my brush is completely stuck on the bucket there. So at least I had the mixture right, and I know my tailgate is going to be cured to a 100% hardened state. 24 hours after the infusion, and this tailgate is finally, after so many hours, ready to go in the oven for the post-cure. So right now I'm ramping down the heat, and the carbon fiber part should be fully cured. So I can't wait to start ripping off all the consumables and see how this thing turns out. So guys, I am super impressed with how this tailgate popped out of the mold and the overall finish. You know, with that little bit of air, it had me a little nervous, I can't lie, but you know what, it blows my mind. I'm so happy right now. And there are a few little flaws, like on the O in the Chevrolet, you can see that there's some air bubbles and it kind of messed up a little bit, but overall, for a first part, that's an absolute win in my books. I am so excited with how this tailgate turned out. You know, for my first part, I can't believe how well it actually looks, and I can't complain one bit. So that's super exciting news for the channel, for the future of this build, and now the possibilities are endless. You know, we built a frame from scratch, the entire chassis, and now we can pretty much make any sort of body panel out of carbon fiber. And before we get to work on some new parts, we have to weigh out this thing, see how much it weighs, especially compared to the other tailgate that's kind of blending in with the steel on the wall there. But this tailgate is super heavy, and you can see that it's heavily damaged from when I tried to pull it out of my first mold. And just to give you guys a little perspective of how lightweight it is, I'm gonna go pick this thing up with one hand. It's pretty impressive. It's insanely light, doesn't make sense. There's no way I could do this with the original tailgate. So I'm balancing my tailgate on the scale right now. And if this can focus. Alright, so it's right at about 3.8 pounds. That is fully balancing. Trying to keep it steady so that it holds its weight, but it's right about 3.8 pounds. So that is pretty impressive. So here we have the metal tailgate, and I had to bring out the bigger scale to weigh this thing. Alright, so I got my metal tailgate, and this thing is super heavy. Hopefully we can get a decent reading. Oh yeah, oh my god, that's a huge difference. Any guesses down in the comments before I reveal the actual weight? So we've got the scale zeroed out. Let's add the tailgate to it. 44.8 pounds, so basically 45 pounds. So this is a 45 pound tailgate, and this one's stripped down. There's actually no inner skin, so an original tailgate would be quite a bit more than that. So an over 40 pound difference between the carbon fiber tailgate that's up there and this metal one. I would say that's a win. So there you have it. That is the first carbon fiber part here on the channel, and I want to hear your thoughts. Let me know if it's worth all this work, because it's definitely a huge amount of time, but I think it's going to be worth it, and it'll be very unique, that's for sure. So let me know what you think, and thank you all for watching. I will see you in the next one.